have to watch a clock. I don't even have to watch a clock. I don't even have to watch a clock. I don't even have to watch a clock.
Hello, hello, happy Monday. Thank you so much for listening to the Bold Moves podcast. I am the host, Mandy Bryce, and I'm very excited to share another fabulous episode with you. Today I chatted with Taylor Morrison, who is an expert in self-care. Self-care has gotten a lot of chatter and publicity and attention lately, which is such a good thing. However, I think a lot of us are trying to do self-care and not actually doing things that provide us with that much care. That is where the inner workout comes in. So I hope you love this discussion with Taylor Morrison about her bold moves, and I hope that you get some insight on some potentially more loving, gentle, caring ways to do self-care. All right, without further ado, here's my chat with Taylor Morrison.
Hello, everyone. Today I am chatting with Taylor Elyse Morrison. Welcome to the show, Taylor.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. So, of course, you know the show is called Bold Moves, and it's all about people who have taken big risks. And you wouldn't be on here if you hadn't taken some yourself. So I'm wondering if you can share with us a little bit about you, your story, and some of those big risks you've taken over time to get here.
Yeah, I got so excited when I found this podcast because I was like, this could basically be the name of my memoir. I just feel like I've taken a series of moves. And even if they didn't seem bold or like big at the time, it all added up to some pretty bold things. So where to start? I went to college and I chose a really broad major because I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do. So I studied human and organizational development. And right out of college, I got a job at a Fortune 100 company in a leadership development program. Again, it was kind of a broad thing because you spend 1 year for 3 years in different parts of the company. So you're not making like a commitment to a certain career path. You get to try different things, but you get to be at this big company. Yeah. And I ended up not finishing that program because I realized corporate life was not for me pretty early on. And so I left and I joined a startup. I was their first full-time employee. And my title is VP of Ops. And what that really meant is that I just did a little bit of everything. I was wearing an HR hat. I was wearing a marketing hat. I was wearing the actual operations hat. And just in any given day, I could be talking to a client or a potential client and then building something for marketing and then fighting whatever fire popped up that day. And it was so exciting and really fun. And I loved that. That was probably to date my favorite full-time job that I've had. But then the company that I was at before, they had a startup and this role came out where they were looking for someone who had experience with their company and then also startup experience. And
perfect.
Yeah, the Taylor who was still at that company, this was like my dream job that I thought that after I finished the program, I was going to try and create this role that had just dropped down. And I happened to know the manager and she was really interested in me being in the role. And then I ended up going back to corporate with this corporate startup. And it was really fun. It was a lot. And really what that did for me was just solidify that I'm not meant to be in corporate, even if it's like a corporate startup. Yeah. It's still at the end of the day, it was like, ooh, this isn't where I'm supposed to be. So I made the leap probably about a year ago. And this, when I say it, it doesn't feel super bold to me because it's not like I just left and didn't have any backup plan, but I had the opportunity to work part-time for one of my mentors. Mm-hmm. And then this whole time I've been growing a branding company and I had some clients for that. So my plan was get out of corporate, work part-time, and then the rest of the time build up my branding company. And the reason, to me, it feels like, oh, it wasn't that risky because I still had this like steady paycheck that was making sure that we could pay our mortgage and stuff. But to my other friends who are killing it in corporate, they're like, that was a pretty risky move. That was a bold move. So I did that. And I feel like that's kind of bringing us more up to date today. So I still have my branding company, even though really that's not what takes the front seat anymore. I realized that for me, the whole model of building a type of company where you're selling hours was just not what I wanted to do a long time. And it got to the point where I had a lot of clients, but then this one day I got sick, or it was several days that I got sick, and I felt like I had to work the whole time, because when you're working for yourself, you don't really get vacation time.
Right. Absolutely.
And it seems obvious, but I was like, oh yeah, like I was planning on billing these hours this week, and if I don't do that, that's going to change my financial picture. And so I started to rethink what I wanted to build. And then shortly after that, I had this idea to build Inner Workout, which is a self-care company. And that's really where I'm at today, is building that. So that was a long answer, and there's some bold moves in there, hopefully.
Well, when you're telling your whole entire career in one story, like your life story, it makes sense that it's long, but it was perfect. I'm so glad to hear the progression, and I think it sounds like a really fantastic thing. I love the name Inner Workout because I'm personally really into fitness and really into personal development. So can you tell me a little bit more about what exactly you do with that role?
Yeah. So the whole thing is to help people practice self-care. That's really what I'm trying to do. And I always say it's not like I'm particularly good at self-care. I'm actually pretty bad at it. You can probably hear as I tell my story, like I was working full-time, and then I went to a startup, and that whole time I had a business on the side. Like I like to do a lot of things, which means it's really easy for me to burn myself out. And so I had to learn how to take care of myself, because otherwise it would have ended pretty badly. So for me, self-care is listening within and then responding in the most loving way possible. And that's really what the Inner Workout does. So it's a 60-minute class that takes place on a mat, and it incorporates movement, breath work, journaling, and meditation. And it feels good just the same way that if you enjoy yoga, a yoga class feels good. But the whole structure is designed for you to really be the teacher, and whoever's leading the class is more of a facilitator, giving you some ideas, and then you listen in and say, oh, I'm going to stay here and stretch more. Or this was the journaling prompt, but I'm feeling led to dive into this thing that happened to me yesterday that doesn't have anything to do with the journaling prompt.
Sure. So you mentioned that there's an instructor or facilitator leading the class. So that shows me that you're most likely in person, or is it online?
So it's both. I'm based in Chicago, and right now classes are in person, but they're also starting in January is when it officially launches. There'll be video classes that are available, and you can get them. I personally love to work out at home, especially in Chicago winters.
In the winter, yes.
To the gym. So you can have the videos whenever you want them and incorporate them on your schedule. And then hopefully eventually there'll be in-person classes beyond just Chicago, but TBD on that.
Okay, cool. That sounds like an awesome plan to develop your business and grow it. I love that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was going to say that you mentioned that a lot of the bold moves that you've made haven't really felt scary in the moment. So it might not be a career-related one, but I'm wondering what the scariest thing you've ever experienced has been.
That's such a great question. Yeah, I guess I'm always afraid, but to me, things seem less risky, because like the biggest risk to me is getting to the end of my life and feeling like I just only lived up to someone else's version of success. The scariest thing for me are really when I'm sharing something that I care about and not sure how people are going to react. Vulnerability is something that's really hard for me, and it's something that I'm constantly working on. So I can think of, I married my high school sweetheart, and I remember like the first time I told him I love you. That was one of the scariest things that I ever did, because you're like, hey, I love you, and I don't know if you're going to say it back to me. Or conversations that I've had with friends, or even business conversations where you're taking a stand and you're putting yourself out there and you're not exactly sure if it's going to be reciprocated.
I love that. And that's definitely a scary thing. And I think it's something that we can all really relate to. I'm curious, of all of these different times that you've been vulnerable, how do you push past that fear and still share your message or tell someone you love them, or whatever it is that you're feeling that trepidation for?
Yeah, I think for me, it's often connecting to either my mission, my vision, or my values, and just remembering like what is the underlying why. Especially for business things, it's like, okay, if I think that my business is going to have this type of impact, then it's actually kind of doing people a disservice if I don't share where I'm coming from. And then personally, I think about like with friends or with my husband, it's just thinking about that trade-off. Like if I don't say this, then we're only going to stay surface level. And I care about this person too much to just keep it here forever.
I love that. That's so deep. And I've heard that before in previous interviews, especially about thinking about your potential impact and how it's almost selfish to stay small and keep it to yourself. Speaking of things with depth, I want to touch more on the self-care that you're talking about, because it's become a bit of a trend, and it's something that I'm glad is a trend, but I feel like a lot of it is like bubble baths and face masks and things that I think are still great and important, but I'm wondering how you see that fit in comparison to the inner workout that you're talking about.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I think it's necessary that self-care is becoming part of the conversation now, but it's also very much becoming commoditized. And it's almost because it's easier. Like it's so much easier. I take a bubble bath almost every week, and it's almost easier to do that and take a bubble bath, even though maybe I'm taking some time out of doing emails or watching Netflix or whatever else I would have done.
Sure.
But it doesn't force me to really like listen to myself necessarily, or to confront some things that are maybe uncomfortable. But it's still something that, for me at least, is really a helpful tool because I know, again, the why behind me doing it. So I think there's kind of almost like a gradation or a scale when it comes to self-care. And sometimes we can lean a lot on self-indulgent. But when I think back to the way that I define it as listening within and responding in the most loving way possible, sometimes that really can be taking time out to do a face mask or to take a bath, especially if you're someone who tends not to spend time on yourself. But there's also so many free things like taking deep breaths, like taking a walk, like maybe not doing as hard of a workout as you thought you were going to do because your body's telling you that it's tired and it needs to stretch. And I think when you add that listening piece instead of just making self-care either an item that you buy on your shopping list or just something at the bottom of your to-do list, that's when the real meaty work happens.
I love that. And especially because I think we have a lot in common in being kind of a workaholic, but I'm anti-hustle porn, but at the same time, when you're doing what you love, it's really easy to want to do so many things and to do it all the time. And I love the idea of taking a bubble bath, but most of the time when I actually sit down to do it, I end up feeling so stir crazy and grab my phone to read emails or end up doing something else anyway. So it's like fake self-care because I'm sitting there taking a bubble bath and relaxing, but really I'm just working in the bathtub.
Exactly. Yeah. And so you find what works for you. And I always like to say that like self-care has seasons too. There was a time when I was like 5 a.m. club, getting up at 5 a.m., getting so much stuff done. And I'm naturally a morning person, but it felt really forced, especially if I had something late the night before and was still like, I got to do this because this is my morning time and this is my morning self-care routine. And now the season that I'm in is just waking up naturally. And I still do a lot of the same things, but there's a lot more listening involved instead of regimented, you must do this, otherwise you're not #self-caring.
Right. I love that because it could almost be the exact opposite if you're forcing yourself to lose sleep or added stress because you're trying to squeeze it into an already busy day or something of that nature. And it's just counterintuitive if you're pushing yourself to do self-care.
Yeah, yeah. And I definitely have been there where it's like, why do I not feel cared for? I just feel tired.
I think probably most of us have been there before. So you mentioned when you were talking about how to push past fear that you look back at, I think you said your vision, your mission, and your values. And I feel like those are words that can sometimes be used interchangeably. Can you tell me a little bit more about the differences between those words for you? And I feel like you must have done some prep work that leads you to have them as so clear and accessible to you. So I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah. When I do work with my branding clients, I used to just say, sure, whatever you need. And then I found that we couldn't make decisions because they hadn't put like any skin in the game of who they are. They were just
Sure.
trying to be kind of similar to, oh, this is what everyone else in the industry is doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I started bringing that mission, vision, values work to my clients. And
Mm-hmm.
then I was like, hey, this is actually really useful. I should do this for myself. So for me, your mission is what you do. And it's especially in Western culture, we so often equate it to like what we do for our occupation, how we get paid. And
Sure.
so I always like to make that distinction that think about it bigger than just I am the founder of Inner Workout. Like that's not my mission statement, is to be a founder.
Mm-hmm.
And then your vision is what happens when you live into your mission. So for me, I really want to help people connect to and care for their whole selves, not just their body, but everything.
Sure.
And so my vision is that if I can do that, if I can help people connect to themselves, then my vision would be a world where there's no burnout because people are so in tune with themselves. And it sounds really weird saying that, but you want your vision to be something that seems almost unattainable because it's something you're working towards for your whole life.
Sure.
So like, if it's something you can do tomorrow, then why is it worth like living for?
Sure.
And then your values are how you live into your mission and your vision. It's we promise to show up this way. It's a promise that you're making to yourself, and it's a promise that you're making to whether it's the people in your life or your clients or customers, depending on how you're doing it. But that's really how I use those three terms, and it's really helpful for me to return to those.
I love that. I think I feel like that would make decision making so much easier because if an opportunity comes up, you look at your mission, your vision, and your values and determine, okay, does this fall in line with those three things? If so, yes. If not, no, thank you.
Yeah, that's exactly what I do. I just deferred a grad school program because I have so much else going on, and it would be really helpful for me to get that degree. But I was looking at my mission, my vision, and my values, and I was like, I'd have to burn myself out to do this because I already have so many other things that are going on. And it was a really hard no, but then it ultimately felt really, really aligned because I knew it was allowing me to show up in alignment with my values by saying no.
That's fantastic. A question that I like to ask all of my guests is if they know their purpose, and if so, if they can share it. Would you say that purpose and vision are interchangeable for you, or is that a completely separate distinction? And if so, I'd love to hear your purpose if you figured that out.
Yeah, that's so interesting. You stumped me. I don't know. I think that they are really similar. I think for me, my purpose would be some combination of all three, really, because like I want to help people connect to and care for themselves. I want to help end burnout. I don't think I could single-handedly do that.
Sure.
And I want to do it in a way where there's room for, I'm trying to think of the exact wording of my values because those have shifted a little bit, but it's like there's spaciousness, there's creativity, and I think all of those help me live into my purpose. But I almost feel like maybe the purpose there could be a statement outside of those three. That's like the Spark Notes version of my mission, vision, and values. So I might have to sit and do some reflection after this.
I love that. It makes me happy that even if you don't have an answer right away, that this conversation has made you think a little bit, and I think that's cool.
Yeah, I think it's cool too.
And I gotta say, like, as somebody who, especially since when people ask me, I have a long list when they say, "Oh, what do you do?" And it's like, oh, here we go. And it feels icky for me to ask that. I feel like I'm gonna start asking people like, "Oh, what's your mission? What's your vision?" I feel like that's a lot cooler thing to ask people. So I think I'm gonna steal that from you.
Yeah, totally. And I stole something from someone else that's just, how do you spend your days? Because when you talk about how you spend your days, you have stuff that you do before work, and then you go to work, or maybe you go to multiple gigs,
Yeah.
and then you have your life after work. And so it allows people to encompass all of that.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that. I think that's another fun one. I've just moved to a new town, and so I have a feeling I'm going to be meeting a lot of new people. And I think these are going to be in my small talk arsenal to get to know people in a less like uncomfortable, icky, cheesy way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm curious with this one, if people are listening and they either want to know more about you for branding purposes or for inner workout purposes, where are you available online, social media, website, and so on?
Yeah. I'm on Instagram at Taylor Elyse Morrison, and Elyse is Elyse. And then my website is taylorelyse.com. And then Inner Workout is at Inner Workout. And then Inner Workout's website is innerworkout.co.
Okay, very cool. Well, people will definitely be checking you out on there, I'm sure. Now, in all of these changes in your career and your life's work, I guess, so far, as well as, someone who is into personal development and self-care, I'm sure that learning is part of that as well. I'm wondering if you have any book recommendations that you can share in case people are listening and intrigued and would like to know more. Or it could be something that's for, the relaxation type of self-care. If it's a fiction book that is a great way to spend an afternoon or something, I'd love to hear that as well.
Yeah. One of my favorite books that I return to is Secrets of Six-Figure Women. And I just love, there's so many things that I like about it, and it applies across industries, whether you're killing it in a corporate job, whether you want to go out on your own and build something. But she has this great quote, feel the fear, have the doubts, and go for it anyway. And that's something that is constantly on repeat in my head. Another book that's really great, and that's a really good one. It's a short read. There's some journaling exercises in it, and that's a really good book to help you define your relationship to work. And in doing that, start to redefine your relationship to rest.
Okay, I didn't hear the title of the book. That was the only thing that cut out. Would you mind repeating that?
Yes, How to Not Always Be Working.
Okay, I think that's something I probably need to read. They both sound like great recommendations. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, that was a great question. Thanks for letting me share some of my favorites.
Thank you. Yeah, I figure if people are listening and the things that you're saying resonate well and they want more, finding you on social media or getting access to your recommended reading is a great way that they can dive deeper. So I always like to share those recommendations. I'm working on putting them all together, like from all 150 or so guests so far into one page, but it's quite the undertaking that I wish I would have done on episode 1 instead of episode 300. But it's coming soon.
Yeah.
All right. So
I'm excited to dive into it.
Excellent. Yes, I'll send you the link too for that one. So I have one final question. Most likely, sometimes it leads to follow-up questions, but my favorite question to ask people at parties and anywhere that I meet them, even before I had a podcast, was on a scale of 1 to 11, if little 8-year-old Taylor Elyse could look into a crystal ball and see your journey up to here and everything in between, as well as the foreseeable future of anything that you have planned coming up, on a scale of 1 to 11, how excited would little you be to see where you are today?
Oh my gosh, totally an 11.
Love it.
Because I started being entrepreneurial and trying a bunch of stuff when I was about that age, a little bit younger. So she'd be like, yay, you're not just sitting in an office. She'd be proud.
I love that. That makes me so happy. Well, I love your mission. I really appreciate what you're doing in the world, and I'm so glad that you took the time today to chat with me. So thank you so much for that.
I hope you enjoyed our discussion. If you would like some more, you can go ahead and head over to the show notes at www.boldmovespodcast.com. That's where you will find links to Taylor and her website and social media, as well as her book recommendations. I also would love for you to share this with anyone who you think will find it helpful or entertaining in any way. I would love it if you would subscribe so that you don't miss the challenge coming this Friday from Taylor. And of course, I would love it if you would leave reviews on Apple Podcasts, because my mission is to reach as many people as I possibly can, and I would love to have the algorithms help in suggesting this as high quality listening material for people with similar interests. So your reviews, especially positive reviews, would help that a ton. All right, that is all for now. Thank you so much and have a sparkly day. Bye-bye.